intellectual property, protecting intellectual property, gets involved when distributors start to play little games. So that needs to be clearly defined. The rights to trademarks and brand names. Brand name is absolutely, to me, always king. You don't want distributors moving in on your brand name. If there winds up being a bun fight, hopefully you'll escape with your brand name, which will mean a hell of a lot in the marketplace. Confidentiality. There are certain issues that may need to be confidential and kept that way. Warranties. What sort of warranties involved? Termination. What are the consequences of falling out of love? So something's gone wrong here, and you say, okay, right, well, what are the steps involved? So either party may decide that they're not too happy with this thing for one reason or another, and you say, right, now you sort of go to the bottom drawer, pull out the agreement and say, right, now, here it clearly defines what's got to happen. So you're not too happy, so you've got to notify people within a certain time, a certain whatever, that you're not too happy about the way things are, and you want to terminate the agreement, so you let people know within a certain period of time, and then what happens to the existing stock and who does what to what. Assignment, another issue. Arbitration, very important issue. Something goes wrong, you're at loggerheads over some issue or another. It's usually a good idea that you avoid having to go to court and have an initial step of arbitration to try and thrash the thing out, hopefully without spending mind-numbing amounts of money, generating piles of angst. And you have some arbitration. The question is, who's going to arbitrate and where? As the same token as that doesn't work and you get to a legal fandango, where are you going to fight the battle? Now, we've had people who say, oh, well, you know, naturally, of course, the only place we're having any legal whatever is London. Well, it's marvellous, mate, but I happen to be in Australia or I happen to be in America. And I don't want to be sort of rushing over there to be briefing people at enormous expense. Often people don't look into the thing and think about that, because when you are involved, we always try and advise clients not to get involved in legal arguments unnecessarily, because there aren't too many winners in this. Well, legal winners, but for the lawyers, but not usually for either party. So the best thing is to try and avoid argument if you can, and try and keep the thing in more sensible terms, if possible. So let's just get down to going back to the lawyer, inverted commas, concern and sort of issues that we've had in the past. Classic issue is where we had an agreement of some several dozen pages with umpteen different items in each page, and we waded through all this, got it right, and sent it off to lawyers at this end, who then rejigged a bit here and there. Then it goes off to London, and some guy, the other party distributor, sits down and has to wind up laying out all these pages on a table because the lawyers at this end had decided, in order to qualify their large bills, that they like to be seen as having done a lot. Well, what they really did was moved all the clauses around all over the place. So you sort of had enormous difficulty figuring out what was actually going on. These guys spent days trying to work out, well, clause 4 on page 20, where in the hell's that gone? Well, it's now on page 3 on section 5, sort of thing. Oh my God! So it's terribly important to give instructions to your lawyer that we're not playing these sort of stupid games. We're not just buggering around with this thing for the sake of it. And not only that, but there's things like that can get the distributor so irate that he decides he really doesn't want to know about you lot. He just hasn't got time to be wasting on this sort of thing, let alone the cost to you in sort of getting it organised. So that's a sort of quite a common scenario. The next issue I'd like to get onto and come back to is the quality of the product. Now, this is and the payment terms. Now, quality of the product is quite a common situation that occurs in real live world agreements, where somebody, the manufacturer whatever, namely you, ships some stuff off to a distributor, and the distributor finds that it's not quite right. And then the question is, well, what's the period of time they need to be notifying you? How many days before they need to notify you that they've got a problem? So you can then respond and sort it out, or take the stock back, or do whatever. Now, this needs to be fairly clearly defined, because the whole thing can stretch all over the place. We had a case of someone we know who wound up shipping product into a company, and product, like a lot of products, there is a certain shelf life before the performance will alter, namely about a month or two. And normally it'd be used this way, but these guys sort of put in their store and buried it underneath tons and tons and tons of other stuff. And several years later, they eventually discover this stuff. And then all hell breaks loose, because they want to sue these guys because they claim the product's not working properly, which after several years is hardly surprising. But of course, you know, I mean, these sorts of things need to be fairly clear cut, so that you can stop the smart ass brigade and keep a level of common sense in the whole thing. So, yeah, quality of product, important to define. Well, yes, this is the life, the product. This is how, if something is wrong on receipt of this product, then so many days, within a certain period, you need to be letting us know that you're not too happy with it. But, you know, in other words, there's limits on these things, sensible limits. Price is often quite combined with payment terms, a very important issue, that you need to define the issues relating to price that is going to be charged, and should there be some escalation, or you suddenly sit down one day and decide you want to double the price, well, you know, this is going to cause a lot of trouble around the corner. So a distributor will want to know that there's some sort of stability in the price, and that should there be a change in the price structure, they need to know within a reasonable period what that change is going to be. And should it be a very large amount, then, you know, maybe there'll be limits on this. There might also be an escalation clause in there which says, look, we'll try and keep this price reasonably steady over a period of, say, 2 years or whatever, but should there be a rise in the price of some of our raw materials or some of the utilities or whatever it might be, then you need to justify that. I mean, I'm not saying you have to do this, but I mean, this is one of the mechanisms we quite often use to say, right, well, the price of X has gone up by 50%, which we haven't been able to sort of cope with, and so we need to be passing this on. So if you can quantify that, then the other side sort of know that they're not basically being screwed. So the price situation is usually fairly important. It's especially important for distributors who may be putting out price lists, and especially if it's a seasonal business, and they might want to maintain a constant price for the length of that season. And they certainly don't want someone in the middle of the season supplying with stuff suddenly whacking their price up by some enormous amount. So that, whatever the deal is, it needs to be fairly clearly defined, because if it is, it stops a lot of angst and arguments and whatever, and a degradation, in inverted commas, of a relationship. Then the issue that's allied with that is the payment terms. Is that when is this product that's been delivered expected to be paid for? Now, this is another very common real live world thing that comes up. So, good idea to be defining, well, you've got to pay for it in so many days under these conditions, etc., etc. And then the fudges of the end of the month, or when it was shipped, and etc. You know, the various parameters that people get up to in these things, that if it's defined reasonably simply and clearly, then it just solves a lot of unnecessary bad news and in the relationship. I think that basically covers most of the things that I think are relevant. Again, we're not in the business of taking responsibility for agreements. We'll give you advice on what's involved in agreement, the sort of things that should be within it, the sorts of issues that are likely to come up. We might even provide you with some sort of template, but that's not the sort of thing you go to the distributor with. You're going to have to put it past your, inverted commas, lawyer there. Now, if you want to go in ideal terms, you should really go to someone who does these things every day. Now, there's not exactly buckets of those guys around, but they do exist. And for them, they've seen all this yesterday and the day before, so it's not a big deal. But for your average lawyer, it is a little bit of a big deal. And if you want to use them, then you can go to them with some sort of basic whatever that does cover the issues, and then they may be able to refine it. But at least you've now got a some sort of broad idea of what's involved in distribution agreements. There is another area which comes down to royalties and selling products for royalties, and that's really another story again. But that does involve a lot of the terms that we've discussed here. Okay, wrap it up. I'll try and smile, which I don't do enough of these. Thank you very much. Bye.